Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live Game Dev Weapons Grade. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of our day at the end of a week, and we either answer some questions about the development of the game, or we speak with artists, designers, conceptors, programmers sometimes. One time we did a show on schedules with producers. We just explore their process, how they go about their work, how they make the things that they make for Star Citizen. And that's what we're doing here today. So let's introduce our panel of esteemed guests. Some of them you may have seen before, some of them this may be your first time, so we'll go around the room and we'll meet who's talking. Jake, since you're in the corner there, let's just start with you. Who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
Hello, I'm Jake Taylor, and I'm a prop and 3D weapons artist.
And so you make props and 3D weapons.
Indeed.
Don't need to explain that. All right.
No, not at all.
Okay. Moving along clockwise, Cory, you've been on the show. You're an SCL veteran, but it's somebody's first show. Who are you? What do you do?
Cory Bamford, lead prop artist. So I mostly chase these lot around.
Now that's at least new. The last time we had you on the show, you weren't a lead, so congratulations.
Yeah, oh, cheers.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good fun. I enjoy it.
Congratulations.
Can you do that? That is so cool.
It is so soft. I know that I'm not shilling. This is mine. This is me on personal time here. It's very soft.
Yeah.
And then that was my going around the room. I realized I had to be up next. So that's Pico. He's a penguin. That's his introduction. And last but certainly not least, David. Who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen?
Yeah, my name is David Sibbe, and I'm a senior weapon artist on Star Citizen. So I do a lot of FPS weapons, sometimes ship weapons, but I'm mostly on FPS weapons.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I do.
You helped us out with our visual guide to FPS weapons that we did in Jump Point a couple months ago. I really appreciate that, by the way. I don't think I ever said thank you, by the way. Thank you. All right, so that's enough for the introductions. Let's get into the show. I understand that we have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys. What are we doing today?
Go on, Jake.
Okay.
Jake's the one doing the things. I'm mostly here for moral support today.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll be able to show off the block out of the new Gemini sniper rifle, and we could also show off the shotgun, which is a bit more ahead, and we can also look at the wear dirt pipeline that we do and just answer any questions, talk about that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, you've got a lot, so we'll keep you on the clock then. You want to start the screen share and take us away?
Cool. So, Cory, David, do you want me to just start talking and you'll interrupt me?
As you wish. I mean,
Cool.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so if people have questions about what Jake's doing, David and I'm sure we can field them and just generally discuss.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take care of the questions, Cory.
Sure, yeah, no worries. I'm not going to answer when is X coming out or anything like that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Please don't ask us that. We don't know.
Yeah. And for folks who want to submit questions during the course of the show, remember you can submit your questions in the chat with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That's going to help our community management team pull out which questions are appropriate for our group here, and then they'll pass them to me, and then I'll pass them to the team. Remember that these are 3 artists. So if your questions are about how this works or how that works or will we get this or whatever, this is not the show for those kind of questions, everybody. Art-based questions for art-based people.
For simple people.
Yep.
Cool. So on the screen, you can see the concept for the sniper rifle. So this is the first thing that, as an artist, we'll see. And this is based off a model as well. So we have the lucky opportunity that our concept artists are also modelers. So we get to take this in and essentially already work off a really good base. So if I bring in the concept now, because right now you're looking at the block out, show selection. This is that model for the render that you see here. And if I show off all the geometry, you can see that when making, no mind was put into making this cheap or clean.
I'm already seeing 1.3 million polygons.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised. I want to make sure that gets across there. Concept models, even when done in 3D, are because they're explorations, because they're working fast, because they're iterating super quickly. There is no conservation of information or polygons being done. There's no efficiency being done. So that is, people often ask, why don't you just put the concept model in the game? It's because if folks remember, longtime folks might remember the Freelancer, when the Freelancer was remade the first time way back around 2014ish. It had rivets in them. That were something like 100,000 tries. So just the rivets alone were just ridiculous, and somebody copy pasted the rivets and into the actual game Freelancer model, and it made things very bad for a while. So you don't use concept models in the game.
Yeah, it's when concept artists do use 3D packages, they'll tend to use usually quite different actual software as well. So I know that a fair few concept artists who do it in 3D will be using something like Fusion 360, which is more for basically like CAD and stuff. It's not really, even the software itself isn't really designed to create the same sort of geometry as, game ready stuff. So especially with our workflow, where we in a lot of video games, what you'll do is you'll create like a high poly model, and then you'll sort of transform that, and you'll like bake that information down onto a simpler piece of geometry. In our workflows, you can see what Jake's doing here. He's actually modeling in like a lot of the chamfers. So everywhere there's like a rounded edge, that actually gets modeled in. So yeah, you can't really transfer the information directly. It's more of a process of like reconstructing the shapes to be optimized for like a game ready scenario.
So you're in the process of it. This is literally like you're about as far along in the process as you are, building this out and converting it from the concept. One of the questions from the chat is, what do you anticipate the greatest difficulty for this weapon to be at this point? I know you're still in early days here.
I know that already, because I've had to tackle it a bit, and it's this area around here, like all this kind of gubbins, because if I focus on the concept a sec, not only have you got kind of like these really difficult organic shapes in a hard surface asset, they're all very slightly kind of turning in and angles.
Wow.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest problems we need to tackle while doing it, is that everything needs to be animated. It needs to work. The magazine needs to rotate out. It has a mechanism, and all that needs to work. And the parts shouldn't intersect, shouldn't move into each other, and having that ugly intersection. That's something we need to prevent while doing it.
And of course, it's something that concept artists know to look out for, through metrics and stuff like that. But you don't always discover every single edge case and issue during the concept process.
Yeah, that's why. That's why we're doing a blockout. So we're doing this blockout in this state, and already do a rig. A rig is basically a skeleton that an animator can use, and the animator then tests it in engine, and while doing it, we already usually run into issues and see how this works out, and then here we can see that the mechanism pretty nice. We can test all that in engine and reiterate on it, because in this state it's really easy to rebuild something or change something. But if it's final and we have already made textures and so on, so the more we've done on it, the harder it gets to change. So in this state, it's still pretty easy to change around shapes and rebuild it.
Yeah. And for those asking, he's working in Maya right now.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because a lot of the assets in Star Citizen, for instance, the ships, props, and environment, are typically made in 3ds Max, but character animations and that's all done in Maya. So for FPS weapons, it makes a lot more sense to be using Maya. You could technically make it all in Max, but it's mostly just that the animators and the rigs all need to be in Maya anyway. So if you can do the art in Maya as well, it just kind of streamlines it. You're not supporting 2 different source files. It just makes things a lot neater. And yeah, the workflow's kind of been adapted to that.
In chat, they have a question. Couldn't there be a tool of some kind that just takes the concept model and then just bakes it down from there?
That would be the
Yeah.
dream. That would make our jobs obsolete.
Yeah, I think like that's what there's a lot of automation that can be done for 3D modeling, but I think it's just due to the fact that we've got such a specific workflow. I think it would be very difficult to get a computer program or an algorithm or something to actually reproduce those results perfectly. We do use for things like LODs in some of the workflows, we have systems that generate our LODs for us, or we have a lot of scripts to automate parts of the process, but as a whole, because we have this focus on optimization and we have a lot of different requirements that really, for a human, once you know the rule set, it's quite simple. But for I think getting like AI or some sort of program to do it, man, I think maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years or something, we might have, we might be closer to that. But
it would also require a longer concept period because all of those absolute things, the functionality would have to be completely, totally, and utterly worked out in the concept phase. Mm-hmm. And while we certainly target that, and we certainly take those things in mind during the concept phase, anybody that's followed the development over time knows that sometimes things just have to change from concept because metrics change, the scale and scope of development changes, the lessons we learn along the way as we make each one of these improves. It's a lot easier for a human to adapt than it is for some automated tool.
Yeah, I think like if you look back at a lot of the workflows that we had, even 10 years ago for video games, it has. We have seen a lot of changes in that there are a lot of workflows that do rely more on like procedural generation or, computer assisted kind of stuff. But yeah, I think, it's a conversation obviously as artists we have a lot is, how long is it until our jobs are going to radically change because, things like deep learning, like deep learning algorithms and stuff are basically going to be like, make this like, I think NVIDIA have done some interesting stuff like landscape generators and things, right? When are they gonna make a landscape generator for 3D art? I think with hard surface assets, it's because they're so sort of organized in their structure. It's really hard to get a computer to make them, if that makes sense. Because I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but when you have an organic asset, it doesn't really matter if the topology isn't perfect, right? You can just kind of munge it. So yeah, I think things like photogrammetry and stuff generally work better on like rocks.
Yeah. Well, and one of the core tenets of Star Citizen is that we use automation and tools and everything to help our workflow and to assist artists and everything, but not to take over the work from them. Some games would use procedural generation and spit out the finished product. We use procedural generation in like our planets and stuff to provide a base from which artists then go and do their work after the fact. So we use scripts and that kind of stuff to help us along the way, but not to do the work for us.
Mm-hmm.
At least today, there's no substitute for that human touch. One of the questions from the chat is how long a process would this normally take? I know there's almost no normal in game development, but looking at this, when you got this model, what was your estimate on how long it would take to make this game ready from the time you got the concept?
I would say it depends on how many problems come up while doing it. Like in the optimal case, you can do it in about 2 weeks, I would say. In a non-optimal case where we need to change a lot, where problems come up and we realize them pretty late in the process, that sometimes happens, sadly. Mm-hmm. It can take up to a month or so. So that sometimes when problems come up super late in the process, that eats up a lot of time. But usually we try to plan it pretty good and get it done as fast as possible. And yeah.
And that's
the main reason. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the main reason for like the sort of block out phase. Like what we would normally do is we get the concept mesh, run it through some optimization processes, and get that in game. and then we can see the character holding it. We can say, does this work on the male rig? Does this work on the female rig? Does it tick all the boxes for the hand grips and stuff? Jake will probably show you another weapon later where we had to make some adjustments to the weapon from the concept because the grip wasn't quite working. Just through while the concept artists are very aware of the sort of the application of a weapon, right? Like a human's holding it, they don't necessarily test all the they can't necessarily test all the use cases. Right. So sometimes we do come back and we get it in and we're like, okay, this isn't working. Tweak the proportions here, maybe make some changes. Just purely because it needs to be used by a character.
I can show that now.
Sure.
Yeah.
As well, if you want.
One of the problems that came up, for example, with the shotgun here is that the magazine actually sticked a little bit too much into the armor of the character, and we had to address that. And that's something while doing the weapon itself. Sometimes you can't even think about the possibility that the magazine, because of the shape it has, it kind of like clips too much into the body of the character, and therefore we had to change the orientation of it, that the flat side is on the body and not the round side that you can see here. If that makes sense.
So some of those changes that you guys are mentioning, if I change over to the shotgun concept, this was a concept that we were given. I can't really show them side by side, so I'm just going to quickly flash between the two of them. But if I point it out in the concept here, we've got like this trigger and then this nice angle here that leads into the magazine, and then it kind of leads out into this really nice long barrel. Mm-hmm. And this area is where most of the change happened. We were having issues with what you said, David, like the character's arm clipping with this barrel. And we're limited, right, by how big this barrel needs to be because we want it to specifically contain, I think it was 12 shotgun shells. So I had to make this thicker. This has to be sitting right up against the trigger now. And this whole nose area had to be brought in way back. Mm-hmm. And because it's a pump action as well, if you look here, the handle's quite slim. And if you were to grab that and drag that back and forth, you probably break your fingers on this or something.
There also wasn't any buffer, was there? It wasn't on a rail, whereas what you've got now is you've got the sort of foregrip sat forwards quite a lot, and it'll articulate backwards. Because this, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has got a pump action and a fully automatic mode, right?
I don't think
or
you're
semi-automatic. Right. Sorry. You don't think I'm right?
I don't think you're right, but.
So it's got a drum mag and it's just a pump action.
A surprise.
I can say that there was some healthy discussion about that topic between Richard Tyler and CR the other day. It's still under review, I think.
Okay, yeah, I know that was initially the sort of brief, but yeah, maybe that's changed now. Cool.
Yeah, and as you can see, we model it pretty detailed so that you can look inside, and you even see the shotgun shell inside on the magazine. You can even zoom in, see the shotgun shell. And what the animator does, he takes the top shell and actually animates it into the chamber. If you having a slow motion in engine, by 10% speed, you can see the shell moving in there while the bolt is moving back. Yeah, actually like this, basically. Yeah.
I can.
And that is a really nice touch, and most people won't even notice, but it's really cool that we have it in engine, I think.
I should be able to show that.
So you're switching around here. So you're now inside Lumberyard. Oh, we lost the.
Oh, there we are.
So this is now inside Lumberyard.
Yeah. So we can show off that shotgun. I just let them drop to the floor and then pick them up from the ground because.
You're a savage.
I'm a professional.
Get a table, Jake.
The table's right over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we fire a shot. Very, very quickly see that come out.
See a dude's torso through the other side.
Yeah. A little fun. Perfect dummies, so I can really see how this gun feels. But yeah.
It's looking cool.
Yeah.
Those guys just showed up for some bikini calendar shoot. And you just...
Yeah.
You got a question from the community here for artists. what are your limitations polygon count wise? This person saw that the barrel's flash hider looked like it had a ton of polygons in it, and then is gaming really moving away from polygon restrictions?
I think I can say something about that. So you can see on this one, together with the magazine, is around 52,000 polygons, which sounds quite a bit, but you need to consider we have a different workflow than most other studios have. So our workflow is custom normals. So all these, like at the front, Jake is showing it with the cube here. This has 12 triangles, and if you bevel it, it already has 44. But if you select the vertices now on it, if you can select all of them, you will see that it's 24. And because of the hard edges here, the hard edges basically split the object into multiple faces on the left cube.
So and each face has vertices, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the vertex count is actually the same for them, or nearly the same. So that's actually what matters in the end is the vertex count. And another thing that matters is small polygons, but we are using level of details of the weapon. So like after about 1 meter or 1 meter 50, it already has it's getting rid of the small little bevels here at the side. So you basically after 1 meter 50, you see the left cube instead of the right cube.
Right. So our weapons use the same LODs that ships do. So that way when we look up close at it, we can see all the full crazy detail, and then everybody else who's running around in game, they're seeing a lower LOD version until they get really up close.
It's also worth mentioning, and I'm not an engineer or a graphics programmer, so I might, this is going to be a layman's explanation, but the advantage of this workflow where you're putting a lot of detail in the geometry, of course it will increase your triangle count, your vertex count. However, in a lot of games, like I said earlier, they actually bake the high poly information into a lower poly version, and they create a texture for that called a normal map, which essentially per pixel will give you like the angle, essentially. Say you have 200 props or weapons in a scene, and you're loading in 200 of those unique textures. It's quite a lot of texture memory. Whereas with our workflow, we do use textures for some things like POM, the materials themselves and so on, but we don't have like a lot of unique texture memory taken up per asset. So you're actually kind of, we're basically taking up more overhead in terms of poly count, but we're also reducing the amount of texture overhead in a way. So it's kind of swings and roundabouts. I think hardware is a huge part of that, and that's not really a topic I'm, hugely educated on, actually, what modern specs are for graphics cards, and it's a difficult one to really explain as an artist, but essentially we're kind of prioritizing reducing texture memory versus the amount of triangles we have.
Yeah.
In a question that asked to look behind the curtain and see if Oz is really there, for the magazines, do the weapon magazines actually have individually modeled rounds inside them? And do they move out of the magazines?
We need to trick it a little bit for not having too many polygons. So the top round is usually modeled completely, and the one under it has a little bit less details than the top one. And if you go even deeper into the magazine, you maybe even have a cylinder with the red stripes. So if you have like a glimpse from the side, you can still, in this case, you can still see it pretty good. But on some magazines, it's the shadow is actually taking away the detail anyway, so you can use more less details the deeper you go in.
Yeah, for things like grenade launchers and such, where all the not bullets but rounds are visible, they'd have to be modeled in.
Yeah.
But in terms of the capacity and stuff is stored as a value somewhere, so they're kind of there, but sometimes they're not drawn. Sorry, go on, Jared.
No, that's it. You do what you got to do to squeeze every ounce of performance where you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's true for most video games, I think, or at least it should be.
We even though we use more polygons, the workflow we do is still optimized quite a bit. So We're not using a heavy load of textures, like Cory said before, which can, in some cases, if you use a 2000 by 2000 resolution or 4000 by 4000, you can easily get to like 100 megabyte per weapon. And if we have like 100 weapons in game, it gets too heavy, and we had to like think about ways of reducing it. So, and our workflow with the custom normals is really scalable. You can use it on weapons, you can use it on buildings, and on. It doesn't matter really what you do with it. It all works.
Yeah,
and that's why it's so strong, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's quite the scalability is really important, especially for say props, for instance, where you have like, I don't know, an absolutely obscene amount of them. Like, you need them to be. We want them to look good. We want them to have a lot of detail, but we also want them to be fairly cheap.
Folks are still talking about whether the shotgun was pump and semi-auto. There are.
I'm sorry.
No. There are combination pump semi-auto shotguns in the world. I think the Tech 12, and there's one from the European Union. His name I can't remember right now. They're rare, but they exist. As far as that one goes, I know it's still under discussion about whether it's going to be both or whether it's going to be the spas. Thank you. See, there the chat is. That's what I was trying to remember. The spas. So. See, you can always count on chat.
Nice.
So they are out there. So I know that that's currently under discussion about where that's going to land, whether it's still going to be a hybrid or whether it's going to be one or the other, or only pump. It's definitely going to have pump. Let's put it that way.
There is a pump on it.
Yeah, so exactly. There is a pump on it. It will definitely have pump. I think the question is just whether it will
got
also
a pump.
Be, a semi-automatic as well or not. So check back later, folks.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to say as well. Those who are paying real close attention, you probably saw that I did some work and then pretty much went back on it all. And that's just going to happen sometimes. A lot of the time you'll try and tackle a situation, realize that it won't quite work, and then you'll just tackle it in a different way. So I tried to get rid of the negative space on this shape here first, and then with this shape here, and tried to combine them and realize, that's not going to work. I'm going to do it this way instead. And now I can get rid of that negative space once these two pieces are combined, and little things like that.
Yeah, and you always need to consider we're working like in sub-millimeter sizes here sometimes. So like the edges are like 0.7 millimeter or something. It's like we need to do it a little bit bigger than it would be in the real world, because if you do it in a game engine, really hard edges are like pixelated a lot, and you're reaching a point where it looks better when you do it a little bit bigger, even though it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
So we have like the minimum value of, I would say, like 0.7 millimeter, and usually I go for 1 millimeter for edges. Yeah. On props, it's probably way more because the objects are bigger, right? Yeah.
Usually our safe minimum is like for, say, like something that's like a meter cubed would be like 0.5 centimeter. We'd say the chamfers. It's kind of down to the use case. Like if we have a prop that you pick up and inspect, similar to a weapon, you'd probably want those chamfers to be sort of tuned to where they are in screen space, if that makes sense. Like how big they are relative to the size of the where they are in the world. But yeah. No, I think the nice thing about modeling this kind of stuff is it is definitely like an iterative process. You're problem solving as you go. You're sometimes tackling shapes you've never kind of worked with before, or employing a ton of different modeling techniques.
You said iterative. If you're playing the Star Citizen drinking game, you have to drink. What's your best modeling advice for an amateur CG artist? This person specifically uses Modo and ZBrush at the moment.
Yeah, they're both really good packages.
For starters, it's the software really doesn't matter that much, I would say. Like you can use Blender, it's free, or you just try to get a version from your uni or so. If you're using Maya or Max, it's also good. Most of the people in the industry use Maya or Max, so that's always a safe bet, I would say. But it's most important is that you keep doing work. Even if it's not good in the beginning, just continue. Don't stop doing your work. Try to improve. Try to get into fields that you're interested in. If you like characters, go into characters, and if you go for like more like weapons, then try to do a lot of weapons, right? Try to learn more about weapons, how they work, because, for example, on weapons, you know, you need to kind of understand the mechanics behind it a little bit at least. So yeah, it's always helpful
right. Yeah.
to have your a proper mindset for what you're doing, you know, and that's really important.
Yeah, I think using reference is a very important thing when you're starting out as well. Like, also, you know, there's tons of communities out there for getting feedback and stuff. Like, you know, you'll find that there's a lot of communities where you'd have industry veterans, you know, in like Discords and stuff. You can get feedback from them. They can tell you sort of where you're making mistakes with your modeling. Like, I think reproducing a shape is quite easy. Reproducing a shape elegantly is where the sort of challenge in, you know, what I would call like production art. You know, we're not necessarily concept artists. We're not sort of designing these forms ourselves, but we're reproducing them with a set kind of criteria.
Right.
You know, if you think about it like pixel art, if you're a pixel artist, you're employing a bunch of techniques to, you know, reproduce something in that sort of style. This is sort of similar. If you're interested in video games specifically, getting into being a 3D artist for video games, definitely learning about the techniques that we employ is, you know, going to get you a long way. Or if you're interested in like, you know, CGI, like film and stuff, you know, they use a whole another bag of tricks, and you can
Yeah.
Probably modeling for them looks like the concept you did before. So for film, it like, of course, they need to kind of look that they don't use 5 million polygons for a screw, but they kind of like don't care too much for like the I would say the polygon quality. You would say like that's more for game art, that we like, you know, have to look a lot how optimized it is, and that you, for example, for this piece we have like 200 polygons, and for films you could use, I don't know, a couple of thousand for this piece alone here.
Yeah. Real-time rendering means, you know, we're rendering the asset, you know, 60, 120, you know, however many frames per second. So it's very specialist hardware doing a very sort of specialist task. For films, it's like they chuck it on an offline render, it just chug. They'll have like a server farm. It'll just be absolutely chugging away, you know. So they can render like, you know, an hour of footage over, you know, 20 computer weeks or whatever. I'm not sure what the ratios are. I'm not too up to date on the like film industry specs, but you know, for games, it's got to run. You know, it's got to run a frame rate that, you know, is sufficient for people to actually interact with it.
And that's why when you're working on games, you're really a technical modeler. So a big part of our work is not, I would say, art in the traditional sense of just doing nice things. It's also a lot of work that goes into learning the techniques, and that's, and for games especially, you need to know how to do your stuff, and then with the knowledge you have, you can do art. But coming to a point where you're so good that it's you basically know it in and out and just can do content over and over, that's a hard way, definitely.
Yeah, you've also got to consider the fact that the hard surface modeling, like what we're doing here, we're creating, you know, machined industrial things. That's only a single facet of what, you know, it can mean to be a game artist. You could be an environment artist, in which case you're making terrain, you're making rocks, you're making that kind of stuff, and we do a bit of that on the props team. Or you could be a character art, you know, studying anatomy, learning about, you know, how muscles and faces and stuff work. Like
character artists aren't real artists.
Oh boy.
No. Character concept artists aren't real artists. We'll make it very specific. Character concept artists in LA aren't real artists. We'll just I
don't want to start a war with those guys.
We'll just narrow it down right there.
We're good pals. You're trying to drive a wedge between us, Jared, and I'm not going to let it happen.
Between you, I'm the one that's going to hear about it.
Yeah.
Do you guys typically do high poly to low poly bakes, even on unique assets like weapons, props, stuff like that, or do you ever use like a mid poly no bake workflow?
Yeah, that's all our work is. So what Jake's doing now is he's making like basically we use this thing called custom normals or weighted normals, where essentially your big flat faces you point the normals straight, and then you'll have like a single sort of 45-degree angle edge, and then the normals will be kind of facing towards the larger surfaces, and it'll fake a curve essentially. So we don't bake any of our assets because I've got, I don't know, 1,000 props, and if each one had its own texture and you were like, okay, load all the props into this level, it would just go and then it would die. So yeah, we tend to we only really bake unique assets when it's either something really special for Squadron or it's an organic asset that you wouldn't be able to throw enough triangles at it to do it justice anyway, and it would end up cheaper just streaming in a texture.
We didn't quite talk about POMs before. It's like a way we do details. So POMs is a short form of parallax occlusion mapping, and we use it for stuff like, especially that goes in. You can see these indents here, and what we do is like we kind of model a high poly. That's the only case where we use it. That's why I came to it now. And so you can see that they have like that it really has perspective. It really goes in, and that is because it has a height map. Basically, everything that's low is black, and everything that's high is white. So you can even if you zoom in, it still looks super cool because it's really giving. Yeah, it's really giving the certain perspective we need for screws and so on.
Yeah,
POMs are amazing. When we started using those.
Beautiful.
When we started using those, that changed things overnight.
So it's basically putting a sticker on it with the detail, and you can use the stickers as much as you want, basically. And it's kind of like baking a map, but just for the little part where you want the detail to be, right? For like screws and indents, it's not worth to model them. It's really easy for us to just. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jake is offsetting them.
There you go. So So just to make sure folks are getting this here, the screws and everything, a lot of those indents, they're not actually like modeled. It's a sticker that goes on, and then
it's like an ini sticker.
Parallax. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about having it as a sticker is it's not unique to that single set of pixels. You can place it wherever you want on the weapon. So you can have a bolt that is 64 by 64 pixels of texture memory. And you slap it on like 90% of your asset on like 1,000 props. You're streaming in that one set of displacement maps, slapping it on like hundreds of props, and you're just streaming that in. The second you stream one prop in, it'll stream in that texture, and then you bring the rest in. It's like that's fine. We've already got that texture. So performance-wise, it's real nice.
Yeah, and it can in some cases it can be like like 200 kilobyte or something, because it's a really small texture that you're using over and over again. It just needs to be really these small pieces, and like the traditional way of doing it in a lot of games that are still done and have been done before is doing basically this technique, but for the whole weapon, even in places where it technically doesn't make much sense to have it, because on a flat surface we just don't need it, right? We don't need to tell the engine that a flat surface is flat because it's already flat. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I saw one person ask in the chat how many LODs we use on an asset. The answer is generally up to 5. Usually what we do, the way our LODs are calculated, so for anyone who doesn't know, LOD stands for level of detail. It's essentially another version of the mesh, the geometry that is cheaper, has fewer vertices or fewer triangles. We take the average size of the small triangles, and we say when that is a certain amount of pixels on screen, switch to the next one. So it doesn't matter if your asset is the size of a space station or the size of a coffee cup. Once those small triangles are on the screen a certain amount of pixels, it will say, okay, use the next LOD. So it's a really lovely scalable system. In a lot of game engines, what you'll have is you'll dictate the distance that you transition to a LOD like manually, which obviously when you've got many assets is a bit of a pain. And it's just like a really elegant system.
Yeah, you can kind of see what's happening here.
Usually, what I tend to do is you've seen it before that basically you have the parts of the weapon with the hard edges, and usually I leave that parts with hard edges. Yeah, it's a really low polygon area, and if you go to a distance of like 20 meters, you can't tell the difference between it. So if you're zooming out, the one without a lot is disappearing on the right, but with the lots, you can't see a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also worth noting that someone asked, do we do our lots manually or do we do them computer generated? It depends on what the asset is. More organic assets you can get with automation. On weapons, because they're so dense, we tend to, doing them by hand is quite challenging. So we tend to do, I think, the first log automatically, and then after that we do it manually. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I tend to do it, because it still has enough detail to usually look really similar to the first one if you do it automatically. But after that, the software kind of doesn't know anymore how to do it. Mm-hmm. And this is like the lowest version where it's just the basic shapes, and it maybe doesn't look too good for you now, but on a distance of on a distance of like let's say 25 meters or like 50 meters, you can't tell the difference.
With that lot, it reminds me of Halo on the original Xbox.
Yeah, but you need to realize we don't have like unique textures, so we can't still make it have the texture on it, and we all need to do everything with polygons. And that looks like like Nintendo 64 style. Oh, even the characters have lots. I haven't seen those.
Yeah, I know we are exploring more automated workflows for LODs using like Houdini. That's quite exciting. I'm a bit of an automated LOD skeptic personally. I think that human beings, I think for the foreseeable future, will be better at it than computers. Obviously, it's not. It takes a long time, and it can be automated, but the results often are not as good. So you'll have more, like in some games, you have more obvious popping. When you're moving away from an asset, you might see it like deform wildly. We try our best to make our LODs unnoticeable, and
there's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah. Nice one. Did you just steal that joke from the chat?
Yes, I stole it from Don Stealer. I always steal my puns from Don Stealer.
You're not getting away from me, man.
No. I've called it out before. Don Stealer is in chat every Friday just to provide me with the worst puns possible, and I steal them freely.
Nice. Good. Pun stealer, Jared.
I think can show off the wear and dirt as well now, because we've done quite a lot of modeling. So we can show off a bit more texture stuff.
Yeah, we got like 15 minutes left, Jake. So, do you want to? I thought we were going to make a weapon skin as well, but that's going to have to wait for another one, isn't it?
We got.
If time runs out, we can do it again, of course.
Yeah, weapon skin. I really wanted Jake to make like a leopard print weapon skin or something.
Yeah, I once made one that had like this leopard skin style in pink and white, and it still didn't make the way into its game. I'm really disappointed. I need to talk to I don't know, producers. Why this didn't happen yet?
Yeah. Just sneak it in one day. Yeah, so dynamic wear and dirt, that's what Jake's kind of showing off now. That's a big part of our sort of workflow. This is one of the times we do use a unique texture per asset. On weapons, we use for a unique texture to generate this wear and dirt, essentially. So the plan is in the future for this to be a consequence of, I can't say when, obviously, but, your handling of the weapon will affect its wear value, essentially. To what degree, I don't know. But for now, it's something that we have a slider that we can, scale. Essentially, we have a texture for that where it's split into the 3 channels, of course, red, green, and blue. That's how computers read textures, how they display photos and stuff. They have those channels. We use the red channel for wear, the green channel for dirt, and the blue channels for something called Ambient Seclusion, which you can kind of summarize as when 2 things are close together, they tend to block out the light. So it's essentially just a way of very cheaply kind of faking that effect to kind of darken your cavities and stuff. So Jake's been working on some tools to kind of help automate the process of generating these wear and dirt masks.
Yeah. So using a blend map that Cory was just explaining, at first I tried to make it within Substance Designer, and then I've got like an auto-generated one here. And then I was thinking like we could bring it into Substance Painter, have very specific parameters that we could play around with. But as I was like throwing it on different weapons, I found that if I just make it in Painter and then just bring them into Designer to export, it's a lot simpler. And often the simpler answer is the best one. And this way it gives us a lot more creative freedom. So with these channels here, I've tried to separate them out into red, green, and blue, but with the red channel, that's going to be the edge wear. So if I look at the weapon here, you see that's like just the edges coming in there, that kind of silver. And then with the blue channel, I've tried to get this kind of peeling metal effect. So when you peel it off, you kind of get this different material that comes in around it. Just makes it feel a bit more grounded, as if the material's peeling off before it gets to the layer underneath. And then with the green channel, I've got kind of a dirt generation, which works pretty well for just creating kind of generic grime and dirt. Like, a big question about getting this to look good was like, how do we want our weapons to wear? Like, do we want to add rust? But not really, because let's say you've left a weapon out in like a planet that's like a desert or something, and you find it after like months of playing, and it's completely rusty on a planet that has no rain. Doesn't quite make any sense. So we've got to try and get it to look generalized.
It's more like grimy and beaten up. Like, it's had a hard life, but it's not necessarily like going to be seized up. It's just kind of been a bit beaten, over lubricated, kind of, nasty, but not,
Exactly.
not like it's...
That's also something we talked about, that we maybe in the future can, like, depending on the planet you're on, you have different kinds of wear and dirt, and that it's like, if it's like a planet where you have a lot of rain, then the wear, when it's now kind of a metal or compound that you have under it, it can maybe change to a more rusty version of it. So it kind of depends. For now, this needs to be like usable on basically every planet we have. But in the future, the system might change to a more complicated system.
We'll see.
We'll see about it.
We won't catch
Just
programmers.
So this is one of those times where I need to jump in there and be like, you guys are working on the art assets to support the future development of a system that'll be created by engineers and programmers and systems designers. So what can and cannot be done, and what will and won't be done, will be the purview of other folks. But you are here making sure that all of your stuff is ready and willing and able for when that time comes, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I saw someone ask about whether the concept artists are more responsible for the functionality of a weapon or whether it's the developers, us guys. Generally, the concept artists will have a pretty decent understanding of how the weapon operates. They will be coordinating with designers and stuff for the pre-production process, like how do we want this weapon to behave, what kind of features does it have. All of that stuff kind of gets kept in mind when a weapon's being in the pre-production stage. So when we receive an asset, the challenges we face largely are, okay, we have this idea for a weapon, it does X, Y, and Z, it has these functions. How do we make that work with the in-game systems? How does it work with the character rig? How does it look scale and proportion wise, and so on? We kind of, a lot of the legwork is done not necessarily by the concept artists themselves, but in the pre-production stage, there's a lot of discussion about the functionality of a weapon.
Yeah.
And then we're kind of like, okay, how do we realize the dream? This dream like of the concept artist and design and so on. Obviously, we're just one small facet of the weapons pipeline. Weapons. You have audio, VFX, animations. The actual gameplay systems. You know, in terms of like the weapon damage and balance and stuff. We just make the thing itself. You know, we don't necessarily. We have a lot of, you know, talented and you know, people with many different skill sets, kind of, who also contribute to like weapons as a feature. We're
Right.
kind of we're a part of weapons content, but weapons feature contains a lot more developers. So we're kind of, you know, we're downstream, so to speak, of some departments, you know, but there's also people who depend on our work, like animators, you know, audio and VFX. They kind of need to see the asset in game first,
Right.
you know. So it's like a multidisciplinary, you know, sort of thing.
There's a pipeline to it, like just about anything else.
Yeah, is that another one for the Star Citizen drinking game?
Nah, I don't think. No, maybe not that one. I would.
Okay.
I would say, what is it? It's fidelity. It's immersion. It's iterative.
Scalable?
It's getting there. I don't think that's there. yet.
Yeah, maybe not. All right, let's make that word
No,
one of the drinking words.
bespoke. Bespoke isn't the. Somebody in the chat's like bespoke. Bespoke's not the Star Citizen. That's the Jared drinking game. I'm the one that abuses that word. One of the chats, we're wrapping up here. Are there any Easter eggs on the weapons you guys have made that you'd like to share?
I've put my sort of name, my abbreviated name, in a few serial numbers, but that's pretty much the most fun I've had. I'm very pedestrian when it comes to. Some people have snuck in slightly more memesome things onto decals and stuff. We try and we don't want people to see something that takes them out of the game, because, you know, if you see a decal that's got, you know, some meme in it, it's not, you know a developer's put that in, right? So it's kind of like, you got to be careful about your Easter eggs that they're not too immersion breaking, I think.
Yes.
And also, you know, if someone sees them and it's, you know, a naughty Easter egg, you might get in trouble. So
You also have to beware not to send folks on random goose chases and stuff because they think it's a clue or something in some ARG game, and it's actually just the locker combination to your that you had in high school or something. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes serial numbers are just really serial numbers and don't have a meaning or something. It's usually they don't have a meaning.
Sometimes it's my bank account number.
Cory, I would think anybody else was joking, but with you, I'm not entirely certain.
Yeah, if you know, you can clean that one out if you find it. That's a joke. I don't really do that.
12 euros can be yours.
Yeah, you can have one whole money.
For modular weapon parts like scopes and suppressors and stuff, is there a version for each? Is there a version of each weapon for every configuration of modules, or are the modules in game actually modular? Wow, this question goes around circles a couple times.
Yeah, it's so we have a kind of an item port system. So we place helpers on the weapons. So you can, in this case, you can customize it. And you have the points there, the attachment points, where you can actually put a different model. So you can put a laser pointer on it, or like a flashlight, and at the front. And not every weapon supports suppressors or muzzle brakes, but in this case it works because it's a ballistic weapon. But some weapons just are not really are just too big, or are not the kind of weapons where you would put a silencer on. So,
Alganthe, yes, you did see what you see, and you'll learn more about it later in ISC this quarter.
Someone asks, what is your favorite hard surface modeling technique and why is it Booleans? I think mine's actually splines. I'm known for my splines. Everyone loves splines.
And there's definitely Booleans.
Booleans.
Booleans. Yeah.
I just like saying it. Booleans.
It's a great word.
Recently, we saw the inclusion of the Lightning Bolt company with their sniper rifles and pistols. What were the different challenges that you faced when making those?
You're very lucky because you have the two guys who made the pistol and sniper rifle right here. Check
Oh
it.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I made that.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's it was one of the more complicated weapons because it's so for us, if it's a static weapon, if we just need to model it, it's always, straightforward. We know what we're doing. Just get the weapon and do it right. But in this case, a lot of stuff is moving around. It's unfolding. You have like moving stuff, rotating stuff. All the little parts at the front, the round stuff is actually moving and or is rotating out. So yeah, I would say that the more animates about a weapon, the harder it is for us to do, and the more we need to consider actually like how stuff behaves and if it like intersects, like I said earlier, and yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite weapon that you've worked on?
I've only made one, so it's the
A couple of squadron stuff. I don't know if I can talk about that, but yeah.
Mine is actually the shotgun. Fairly new to the weapon pipeline. I've made that pistol and that SMG, but the shotgun's the third one I've made. The fourth being this sniper rifle. But this one was the most fun because I think I had a bit more control over it because there were a lot of things that did have to change thanks to things clipping with the animation. So for me, that's why it was more fun.
That's a great looking shotgun. I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of, but it's definitely sparking a familiarity with me that makes me appreciate it a little bit more.
Oh yeah, man! Thank you.
I just can't. I just the entire show I've been trying to figure out what it reminds me of that makes me like it so much, and I can't think of it. maybe it is a Tommy gun. Maybe it's a 30th century version of a Tommy, although that would be a machine gun, not a shotgun. But I don't think it's a Tommy gun from the chat. Let's see if we have any more questions before we let you go for today. Let's see, what else do we got here?
someone said AA-12, which is another drum-fed shotgun.
Yeah. Lots of questions, of course, for the show, but folks, remember that these are artists. So if you're asking about bugs or connection issues or something, these would not be the people who could speak to that. Do you ever soften or harden the normals of the geometry on a per need basis, or do you have like a set of guidelines?
For the normals on the vertices. So usually what I tend to do is I try to have everything soft and have like on all hard edges have the a chamfer or a bevel. So yeah, that's how I usually work. That I don't leave a lot of hard edges, but of course sometimes you need to do it for certain reasons, and then you can just select all the edges, harden them, and just leave them in the state. Yeah.
Yeah. An edge case for having a hard edge amongst custom normals is when you've got like a super thin face, or actually I can actually show with a shotgun within here, because this is super thin. I haven't actually beveled the edge on the inside because it doesn't need to be. It's just a bit of where I can save some memory.
Oh, nice, Jared.
Yeah, so we're about at the end. So why don't you go ahead and stop the screen share, and we'll wrap things up there. I think we're on the wrong. Yep, I'm on the wrong screen now. Oh no, we're right. So, yeah, I was showing you. This is my weapon.
Oh, that's
wow.
great.
I'm not. Toast doesn't let me fire it in the house though, so I can't show it to you. I can't show it off.
Not after the eye incident. That was a very expensive trip to the doctors.
Hey, eyebrows grow back.
Yeah, the eye patch. Yeah.
Eyebrows grow back. So, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of the end of your week to hang out with us and show a bit of your process. We will absolutely bring you back at some point to do the weapon skin thing. There's always. Oh, that's right. Toast is in the chat. He's like, I'm not in the house. Go ahead. So as we are wont to do, we are going to throw the raid over to a Star Citizen streamer who is broadcasting right now. The streamer today is an oldie but a goodie. It is DJ Knight. DJ Knight, who once took me to an all-American pizza place in Cologne, Germany. That was just Domino's. It was just Domino's. Like, we got all excited. We were like, "Wow, all-American New York pizza place in the middle of Germany. Yeah, let's check it out." And it was just Domino's.
Can you say Domino's for us, David?
Yeah. So
Domino.
guys, we're starting up the raid, so
Domino's.
you can opt in right now. When you get there, tell them Jared says, "What's up with German Domino's, dude?" For Star Citizen Live, I'm Jared. I'm Jared. That's Jake. That's David. That's Cory. And we'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.